everyone to our session on integrating gender equity and social inclusion to reach the last mile in NTD elimination. My name is Claire Carlson, and I am your co-moderator for today. My colleague from Uganda, Emmanuel Segawa, will be your moderator for the second half of this session. I am a senior associate at YHER, a small business that serves as the Gender Equity and Social Inclusion Technical Lead for USAID's project Act to End NTDs East. We'll be focusing today on how a series of gender equity and social inclusion assessments, followed by root cause analysis exercises in Ethiopia and Uganda, facilitated learnings, posed new questions, and developed locally led strategies for how to best reach the last mile in trachoma elimination and control. And so we'll have our slides come up now, and I'll move on to some housekeeping items. Great. All right, we're on that second slide there. Before we get started, I want to encourage all of you to introduce yourselves in the chat with your name and where you are calling in from today. We would love to see where you all are zooming in from. And throughout this session, please feel free to put your questions in the chat. And during the plenary discussion, the speakers will have a chance to answer your questions. All right, next slide. We have a great agenda today, which will start with an overview of the GESI approach used by the Act East project, followed by country spotlights on Ethiopia and Uganda. We'll have a chance for Q&A, and we'll then transition to some group work where you'll be able to engage more fully with the root cause analysis tool used by Act East. Next slide. And so without further ado, I will start us off with an overview presentation on the gender equity and social inclusion approach used by USAID's Act East. Thanks for your attention, everybody, and thanks for putting in the chat where you're from. It's wonderful. All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Claire Carlson, and I'm a Global Senior Associate with YHER. It is my pleasure today to introduce the gender equity and social inclusion approach that is being employed by USAID's Act East program. The impact of gender equity and social inclusion, or GESI, on health outcomes is fairly understood among key stakeholders and program implementers. Yet attention to GESI within the NTD space is just beginning to gain attention. NTD elimination and control cannot be achieved without reaching the last mile, meaning those individuals or groups that are often systematically missed during important NTD interventions, such as mass drug administration or MDA. To reach the last mile in NTD elimination and control, it is essential to identify and target those that MDA campaigns are missing. Often the reasons that groups, individuals, or entire communities miss or refuse MDA are related to considerations of gender, socioeconomic standing, ethnicity, religion, disability, or location, among other GESI factors. NTD infection risk and experiences with morbidities can also be shaped by GESI-related factors. NTDs disproportionately impact and disadvantage vulnerable groups, such as women in some settings, ethnic or religious minorities, or transient populations, due to biological and sociocultural reasons that influence their exposure to NTD infection, disease risk, and access to care. Act East has been given the opportunity to work with national NTD programs to explore and address GESI considerations to ultimately support the achievement of a country's NTD program goals. I'd like to next provide an overview of the GESI approach used by the Act East program. The main goal of the GESI approach employed by Act East is to integrate and mainstream GESI considerations, approaches, and capacity to reach the last mile in NTD elimination and control. This is done through support to NTD stakeholders at various levels, national, subnational, and most importantly at the community level, to encourage the identification and consideration of GESI-related factors that may be impacting NTD program outcomes. In Act East, this is often related to improving coverage of MDA. YHER's IDARE methodology is at the core of the Act East GESI approach. IDARE is based on the science of improvement, and essentially it zeroes in on the gaps affecting health outcomes. In the first step, identify, we're looking to reach those last mile groups and individuals. We want to understand who they are and what gaps, barriers, and other considerations they experience that may impact their access or acceptance to MDA. Identify is a continuous process and is built into our GESI tools and approaches on Act East, as we want to ensure we are repeatedly assessing the environments and communities where we are working, and that we are continuing to validate or challenge previous assumptions. The design, apply and assess, and record steps are also critical, as they should be driven by NTD stakeholders and other influencers in the countries where we work and the communities we are attempting to reach and support. In addition, under our GESI approach, we strengthen the capacity of national and local stakeholders and influencers to design solutions to address the barriers to achieving high MDA coverage. For example, a community might face rampant rumors and misinformation about MDA, which has been deterring people from accepting MDA. Through the IDARE methodology, we support local stakeholders to identify the underlying reasons for low MDA coverage in their village or ward or district, and strengthen their capacity to develop and test solutions to address those barriers. Lastly, we expand or scale up successful solutions based on learning and adaptation throughout the IDARE process. Locally designed and driven plans, which occur from the design step onwards, have checkpoints built in to assess how locally led plans or solutions are going, if new barriers are arising, or if factors we may not have known about at earlier stages are emerging. If needed, we use this information to adapt or devise new strategies that may be a better fit for the communities we are supporting. In a critical first step to applying the IDARE methodology, the Act East program carried out a series of GESI assessments. These assessments' purpose was to identify GESI-related constraints and opportunities to improving MDA and identify ways to respond to them in order to accelerate progress toward elimination and control of NTDs. In Uganda, Act East supported the Uganda Ministry of Health to conduct a GESI assessment in 3 districts, Arua, and Moroto. In Ethiopia, Act East supported the regional health bureaus to conduct a GESI assessment in Sododachi, Dera, Adaba, and Wanuthwa. The assessments in Ethiopia and Uganda were conducted in districts with low MDA coverage and persistent disease transmission. Both assessments sought to answer a series of key questions, specifically, how GESI-related factors impact the ability of different groups to access and use NTD services, such as MDA. The assessments were designed to generate findings that are focused and could lead to actionable recommendations for the program to implement. Since the assessments were completed, their findings have greatly informed a series of activities and approaches to better integrate and institutionalize GESI into the NTD response in both Ethiopia and Uganda. Most prominently, Act East has built on the GESI assessment findings by implementing a GESI-focused behavior change activity. The behavior change activity has been implemented in high-burden districts in Ethiopia and Uganda that were facing low MDA coverage and persistent transmission of trachoma. More broadly, the GESI assessments have served as a starting point for us to continuously ask questions and reveal new programmatic and operational insight on GESI-related gaps and barriers to high MDA coverage. Together, the GESI assessments and the subsequent behavior change activities have generated new operational research questions and insights for improving the effectiveness and equity of NTD response. Let's discuss next in a little more detail Act East GESI behavior change activity. The IDARE methodology serves as the basis for the behavior change activities implemented in Ethiopia and Uganda. You can see here the main steps of the activity and how they align with the IDARE steps. We first form and strengthen a subnational or district GESI team made up of various NTD stakeholders. This GESI team is meant to drive and oversee the process and demonstrate commitment to GESI integration at the district and community levels. The GESI team also selects a cohort of individuals who missed the previous MDA using the data available to them. This cohort of individuals is the focus of our behavior change activity. We then support the district GESI team to conduct a root cause analysis with the selected community members in the cohort. The root cause analysis is used to identify barriers the community is facing and to validate or challenge previous assumptions that emerged from the GESI assessment. Next, we ask the community members in the cohort to identify influencers in their community. It is important that the cohort tells us who these individuals are, so we don't go into this process with preconceived notions of who is influential in a given community. The community-led selection of influencers is critical because they will ultimately be the ones designing and implementing solutions to improve MDA coverage within the cohort. The district GESI team then forms a behavior change team from the influencers the cohort identified. The district GESI team trains the influencers so they can devise and test solutions to overcome their own community's barriers. Importantly, the influencers on the behavior change team are trained on the GESI assessment findings and root cause analysis findings to inform their plans to ensure solutions make the most sense for their communities. Built into this process and the various IDARE tools are steps for continuous learning, checkpoints to understand what is working and what is not, what information we are learning, and how we might adapt our approaches, our solutions, to reach our goal of increased MDA coverage. National NTD stakeholders and the GESI team lead these actions quite independently, and so the behavior change activity serves to strengthen their capacity to expand this work as well. In summary, the Act East GESI behavior change activity that has been implemented in Ethiopia and Uganda, and the IDARE methodology that undergirds it, specifically the root cause analysis tool, all build upon and refine the GESI assessment findings. And together, the activities continuously gather new information to better identify GESI-related gaps and challenges to reaching programmatic and country-specific NTD goals. As you can see, Act East implements this GESI approach in 5 countries with slightly different disease focuses for each country. Today, you will hear specific examples and learning from Ethiopia and Uganda as they implemented the GESI assessment and behavior change activity under the Act East program. Thanks so much for your time and consideration today. Now that we've heard about the importance of integrating GESI considerations into NTD response to reach last mile individuals and groups, and have seen how this has been done on Act East in theory, we'll next hear from Ganet Kase on how this works in practice. Ganet is a GESI consultant from Ethiopia, and she will share specific GESI assessment findings from the Oromia region, followed by root cause analysis learning from the GESI behavior change activity that was implemented in Adaba, Ethiopia. Welcome, Ganet.
Hello everyone, my name is Ganet Kasai. I'm a GESI behavior change consultant with YHER here in Ethiopia. This presentation will focus on Act East's GESI approach in Ethiopia, specifically GESI assessment and behavior change tools and analysis, steps to inform MD learning and improvements for trachoma, and importantly, how our tools and analysis approach can continuously identify ongoing or new areas for operational research. We began our assessment in 4 waradas, 1 in Gambela, 3 in Oromia region, and then moved to GESI behavior change activity in one of the 3 waradas in Oromia, which is called Adaba, to seek to improve MD coverage for trachoma. The key steps focus on forming a GESI team at warada level to support the activity, and then to conduct a root cause analysis to further validate what we learned in the assessment. This analysis is with a cohort of individuals who missed previous MDA. We conducted this in 2 qabalis. Importantly, that root cause analysis exercise identifies influencers in the communities who we then engage to form behavior change teams. Those behavior change teams then devise local plans to improve MD coverage. Key to this is that the local plans continuously identify and document gaps and barriers, and this informs ongoing learning, as well as ongoing and additional research opportunity to inform MD improvements. Our approach recognizes that we may not always learn everything at once, but as we go through the process, our steps and tools essentially instill checkpoints to recognize and identify new learning or new questions we may want to seek to answer to then improve outcomes. GESI assessment snapshot reasons for missing refusing in Oromia. As mentioned, continuous identification of GESI-related gaps and barriers is key to the IDER methodology and the GESI behavior change approach. Here you can see the top reasons for why people miss or refuse MDA in the 3 waredas in Oromia region, based on how often they were mentioned by participants in the assessment. In addition to understanding why someone is missing or refusing, it is also key to identify who is missing or refusing, especially as we continue with the behavior change activity. These individuals and groups include youth in Adaba, Sododaji, due to low risk perception, more likely to distrust MD, government, use alcohol, men in all districts due to not being at home during distribution, during farming season or migration, elderly in Sododaji and Wantua. They often felt MD was no longer necessary because of their age. They think MD is only for young people. Unexpected number of committee members during seasonal activities. People that fear side effects can be men and women. For women especially, those that fear miscarriage infertility, because they heard the rumors saying that MD causes miscarriage and infertility. People with disabilities and female-headed households often excluded in Wantua. What we discovered also in Wantua, the top reasons for missing, refusing was mostly fear of side effects and low risk perception, especially among youth and men. Next, we use the assessment findings to inform the GESI behavior change activity, which we conducted in Adaba. The box on the left shows in a bit more detail the behavior change approach and steps which I covered in an early slide, but it is here again for your reference. An important step again to emphasize continuous identification of barriers is the root cause analysis we conducted with a cohort of individuals who have missed or refused previous MDA. The issues that came up during the root cause analysis were largely related to what we found during the assessment. So the root cause analysis essentially helped validate the assessment findings. We also found some other barriers with some specific to MD improvements. For example, on the data and the discrepancies that were found in the MD registers in terms of projected versus registered populations. This in turn could skew MD coverage rate and impact decisions made in a particular warada or Kavali. In the bolder section, you can also see some suggested solutions that were recommended by the behavior change teams ahead of MD. Many focused on the messaging and mobilization aspect of MD.
Thank you so much, Gannett. I appreciate that really insightful presentation. Next, we're going to hear from Emmanuel Sagawa, a senior gender and youth advisor from YHER from Uganda. Emmanuel will share with us how the root
which the
cause
assessment
analysis that was conducted in Uganda. Emmanuel is going to share with us how the root cause analysis that was conducted in Uganda built on the GESI assessment findings and how feedback from communities helped inform more locally relevant solutions to reaching Uganda's trachoma elimination goals. Welcome, Emmanuel.
Hello everyone, my name is Emmanuel Segawa. I'm a Senior General Youth Advisor with WIHA. I'm a Ugandan and based in Uganda. I'm very excited today because I'm going to present about the process, results and learning from implementing a GESI sensitive behavior change activity to improve trachoma mass drug administration outcomes among hard to reach groups in 3 districts in northeastern Uganda. The presentation is going to focus on how a GESI approach in Uganda's NTD response can help us to continuously identify new and ongoing areas for operational research and learning. In 2019, Uganda's Minister of Health, with the support from USAID's Act East, conducted a GESI analysis to improve program understanding of the groups that are consistently not reached by the NTD response, but also to understand better ways of reaching them. Since then, the results of this analysis have been used to improve NTD programming in the country, including informing the NTD sustainability plan, but also sensitizing a cadre of GESI trainers that are now coordinating GESI integration in the NTD response in the country. Additionally, results from this assessment gave us much more knowledge on the barriers that were affecting achievement of high MDA coverage in the country. The Ministry of Health built on this knowledge and collaborated with the Act East to establish a pilot behavior change activity in Moroto district. This behavior change activity identified groups that were refusing or missing trachoma MDA and trained the community-identified influencers to devise solutions to increase MDA access and acceptance in the district. The activity was implemented in 2 health facility catchment areas, and it covered a total of 4 villages. This behavior change activity used WIHA's IDEA methodology and tools to address GESI-related MDA barriers. The Ministry of Health, with the support from Act East, worked with the national trainers to conduct training for Moroto district stakeholders, and these came from the Health Department as well as the Community-Based Services Department. The training covered NTD and GESI, the connection between the two, and at the end of the training, a district GESI team was formed to coordinate GESI integration into NTD response in the district. The training participants also reviewed data for the previous MDA and identified 2 health facility catchment areas that had very poor MDA coverage results. And with this information, they identified the health facilities to work with and also selected route agents that would directly coordinate with the community level structures to implement this behavior change activity. So the district GESI team that was formed together with the route agents reviewed the MDA registers and identified the communities that had missed MDA, and from these community members they formed 2 cohorts, 1 cohort per health facility catchment area, and each cohort was comprised of about 30 people. So the 60 people that were forming these cohorts were later met by the district GESI team and the route agents, and these used WIHA's root cause analysis tool to have conversations with these people who missed MDA to understand the real reasons for their refusal to participate in MDA or for their missing of MDA. So during these conversations, the route agents also asked about the community influencers that would later form the behavior change teams. They also asked these community members whether they intended to take MDA in the next campaign. So after getting information from the cohort members, the route agents together with the district GESI team analyzed this information to identify those barriers that were causing people to miss or refuse MDA, and then they invited the influencers identified by the community, recruited them into behavior change teams, and then provided orientation to these influencers on trachoma, covering what trachoma is, what causes it, how to prevent it in the community, and then in addition, they also oriented these influencers on the barriers that the communities that identified them faced, and those barriers are the ones that made them miss or refuse to participate in the MDA previously. So the influencers looked at these barriers, and based on them, they designed solutions and tested them to see if the situation would change, and these community members would later accept and take the MDA. The solutions were implemented with a lot of success, and this year, 2022, we built on the successes in the Moroto pilot to expand the activity within Moroto, but also to 2 additional districts, Amdat and Nabilatuk, ahead of the August MDA this year. This behavior change activity has helped us a lot in finding areas for new research and learning. For example, establishing ways of promoting equitable access to MDA, but also accelerating the progress towards achieving Uganda's NTD elimination goals. The people who participated in the NTD training at the district level, plus the cohort members that were interviewed using WIHA's root cause analysis tool, identified a number of barriers to MDA access and acceptance. So these access barriers included, for example, not being informed of the MDA dates, so people didn't know when MDA was happening. Work-related movement, especially among women and girls, they moved to burn charcoal, to collect firewood to sell and find food for their households, and then migration for pasture during the dry season. Also, there were cross-border movements, also for the same reason of pasture, and then insecurity that led people to move to other communities. There was also inaccessibility of some communities to NTD services because of poor roads, poor network, and poor infrastructure. For example, community health workers were missing in some of these communities. Then there was the issue of data inaccuracy by VHTs, which led to lack of information and responses to better reach the missing populations and individuals. Among acceptance barriers, there was lack of information about trachoma and MDA, and therefore people didn't know the use of MDA. Why would they participate? Then fear of mixing local herbs for eye infections with the MDA drugs, and then there was a fear of side effects. For example, taking MDA drugs on empty stomach. Cultural beliefs and stigma were another problem that made people not accept MDA. And equipped with this information, the influencers in their behavior change teams designed solutions and tested them to ensure that they would encourage communities to access but also accept the MDA. For example, they conducted household sensitization on trachoma and MDA, connecting the two and encouraging people to understand why it is important to participate in MDA. Communicating MDA dates among the cohort members they were directly engaging, but also other community members, including CLAL leaders, and then supporting MDA teams to confirm that everyone in their communities, including the cohorts they were directly influencing, received MDA. In addition to implementing these solutions to promote access and acceptance of MDA, the influencers also wanted to deal with the underlying causes of persistent transmission of trachoma in their villages. And for this, for example, in Moroto, the male behavior change team members participated in household hygiene and sanitation as role models to the cohort members they were directly engaging, but also as role models to the rest of the men in their communities. The influencers also engaged men to take part in cleaning their children's eyes to reduce the risk of trachoma, and also engaged general populations in household hygiene and sanitation. And even in the new districts that we moved to this year, we saw the same trend. The influencers are implementing solutions to address barriers to access and acceptance of MDA, but also they are continuing to implement solutions that are trying to control the spread of trachoma in their communities, particularly the F and E components of the SELF strategy. In terms of results, in Moroto pilot, we registered 100% of all the 60 community members that were engaged directly, but this achievement was far beyond these 60 cohort members, because nearly all community members in these villages accessed MDA, and they were being mobilized by the cohort members and other community members that understood the importance of having everyone get the treatment, because they knew that if your neighbor doesn't get the treatment, they could be a source of your new infection. Then there were also noticeable improvements in household hygiene and sanitation in the villages where the influencers were working when you compare them with the villages where they were not working. So the solutions they implemented around hygiene and sanitation worked well in these villages, and that's why they were looking cleaner and better managed than the villages where the influencers were not working. In Amdat and Nabilatuk, we don't have results yet for the cohort members who accessed treatment, but the pre-MDA intention data we have indicates that we are going to get good results among the cohort members. In terms of next steps, we are going to be reinforcing findings through repeated application of the root cause analysis tool. We realized that the findings we got by applying this tool with the cohort members were similar to the original findings we established during the GESI assessment that the ministry conducted. So we'll continue to do this to learn more and research more as well. We will strengthen the capacity of the community influencers through behavior change teams, and we will continue to work with the community stakeholders to accelerate progress towards NTD elimination. We'll build on the successes of Moroto and Amdat and also Nabiatoku districts by continuing to provide coaching and mentorship assistance to the district teams, but also the influencers. And we hope to leverage the experiences we've gathered from this behavior change activity so far to expand into other districts with a persistent trachoma transmission. We will continue to contribute to new areas for operational research and learning as we implement this behavior change activity. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Emmanuel, for that excellent overview of how Uganda's GESI behavior change activity has facilitated locally led interventions to achieving high MDA access and acceptance. We have now heard two different examples of how the GESI assessment and behavior change activities under Act East have led to really rich insight into programmatic and operational research areas as we continually seek to really better understand the communities we are serving. We'll transition now to our plenary discussion. It's your turn to ask your questions. Please continue to put your questions in the chat throughout this period, and we will go to as many of them as possible. I can start off with a question for Gannett. In Ethiopia, Gannett, what kind of interventions did the community influencers implement to overcome the community's barriers to accepting and accessing MDA?
Thank you, Claire, for the questions. Yeah, what I would say, the community influencers implemented different kinds of interventions to overcome community identified barriers to accept and access MDA for people who missed or refused. Some of the interventions are like community influencers were capacitated with good skill and knowledge of MDA and its benefit, so that they have clear understanding of what MDA is. And they identified people who missed the previous MDA, and they asked them their reasons why they missed or refused MDA. Based on their answers, they give advice based on their experience, how they benefited from MDA. So like for those people who refused, they were able to give clear understanding. And community influencers used religious institutions, schools, farmer associations, unions, community gathering to provide MDA-related information. So in those occasions, they find many people and they were able to pass MDA messages for those people. And community influencers also create opportunity for people to give their testimony about MDA. For example, some of the rumors like for women, why they refuse or they stop MDA is fear of miscarriage or infertility. So during those gatherings, like people, women who have taken MDA, and after taking MDA, they were able to give birth, they give their personal testimony to the community. So those people who fear or refuse MDA because of the rumors, now they get clear understanding that MDA cannot cause infertility or miscarriage. And community influencers also were able to teach their family, friends, their neighbors, and the wider community about MDA. So when they start at home, they were able to give their experience to their friends and neighbors. And community influencers also were able to take part in MDA, and people listen and obey them. So like previously, now these days they are included, and with the MDA team, they were able to pass messages to their people. So those are the strategies or the interventions that
Great. Thank you so much, Gannett, for that added detail and those examples. Really, really helpful for our understanding and learning about what kind of locally led solutions were developed by community influencers in Adaba in Ethiopia. Thank you for that. I'd like to direct the next question to Emmanuel from Uganda. It's a two-part question. The first part, Emmanuel, is what experience do you have in ensuring that GESI is not cut from budgets? How can it be integrated with other activities? And then the second part of this question is, and how do you ensure that learnings from your GESI assessments are integrated into methodologies, messaging around MDA? So the first part is about budgets, and the second part is about applying those GESI assessment learnings into MDA.
Thank you very much. I'll answer the first question, and I'll ask you to repeat the second question, the second part of the question as I finish the first one. In ensuring the budgets for GESI are not cut, I mean the resources for GESI are not cut from the budgets, what we normally do is to start with training the stakeholders, all the stakeholders, the district leadership, and then other stakeholders that are managing MD or NTD service provision. When they know the connection between NTDs and GESI, then they will make sure that we have the budget for addressing GESI-related barriers to NTD service access and also provision. So that's what we do to ensure that everybody knows the importance of integrating the GESI in the NTD response. And we do this by conducting training. And our training is well designed because we also use a number of exercises that practically help people understand the importance of GESI, but also it helps them to emotionally connect with the people who are usually out. They tend to understand the real issues that they face. So this helps us to make sure that the budgets, the resources for GESI are not cut out of the budgets. It is still a struggle, but we are trying to use that approach, and it seems to be working. Then the next part of the question, I don't remember what it was.
Do you want me to repeat the last part, Emma? It was a lot. Yeah. The second half of the question was about applying those GESI assessment learnings. How do you integrate it into methodologies and messaging around MDA?
Yeah, for example, when we supported the Ministry of Health to conduct a GESI analysis in Uganda, the learning we got from this analysis, we used it to inform the NTD response in the country. For example, informing the NTD sustainability plan in the country, but also we used this learning to conduct a training for a number of stakeholders in the country, including the GESI trainers. And after this training, we brought a number of stakeholders together to discuss the GESI-related barriers and for them to design a toolkit to integrate GESI-related materials into the general MDA and NTD response materials in the country. So by doing this, I think we are supporting the integration of the GESI for various diseases, but also it helps us to ensure that whoever is responding to NTDs in the country has got materials to use.
Great, thank you so much, Emmanuel. I appreciate it. The next question I'd like to direct to Tarub, if you don't mind getting on video, Tarub, for our next question from the audience. I believe our final question of this session. I apologize for how short our Q&A session is. We want to get to our breakout groups as soon as possible. Our question is from the audience. I was wondering if you have any thoughts, ideas on how to integrate your lessons learned across multi-disease intervention programs in a local needs context. How to make sure messages and initiatives from different programs are synergistic in nature and build towards sustainable community liaison.
Sure, thank you so much, Claire, and thank you for this very important question. Our methodology that we use, which Claire and the team described to you, the theory behind it and the application of it, and then shared some lessons learned, allows us to be as flexible as we possibly can. In fact, we do not encourage cookie cutter type solutions, but we very much encourage locally contextualized solutions, and then encourage learning among different programs and between and within the same program, even in one country across different diseases, because each disease has specific issues, each country, each region within a country, sometimes each district within a region, sometimes certain communities within that district have different needs and different influencers that we use when we apply the innovation. So what we do usually is we try as much as possible to make sure that those solutions are owned by the community, and then we start sharing those lessons learned, where sometimes the solutions can be applied in other communities and sometimes they can be adapted before their application. And IDER allows us to continuously monitor. So let's say we learned that there is a solution that worked very well in one community in Eastern Uganda, like Emma was sharing with you, or in Haiti, for example, or in Ethiopia. And then we share the learning in a professional setting, like this one, for example. And then one of you will adopt a solution that was mentioned. IDER will allow us to continuously monitor and see if the solution is working or not, and helps unfolding, continuous unfolding of the issues affecting that result, but also allows us to make sure that if the solution is not working, we immediately retire it. And that's important. We don't wait, especially in gender, when we address gender equity and social inclusion, we don't wait for a long time to evaluate or assess whether the solution is working or not. We retire a solution that is not working, making sure that we do not cause any harm to any person that we are trying to reach. And if the solution is working, we expand on it. So there is a lot of adaptation, a lot of continuous monitoring, a lot of learning, but we never encourage, excuse me, cookie cutter solutions. So yes, there is a lot of sharing, but we are not striving to have our solutions consistent or the same across the board.
Great, thank you so much, Tarut, for illuminating for us further that IDER approach, and what it might look like being applied and adapted to different contexts, even to different diseases, to a multi-disease type program or approach. I really appreciate that. And that actually concludes our Q&A session, as we want to get to those breakout groups and make sure you have a chance as an audience to go off mute and share more of your thoughts and to learn from each other further. And so I will now
Before we go, Claire, sorry, but we have more questions. I will be happy to answer in an email. Martha sent a question. If you can please just send us your email, or Claire, if you can drop your email so people can reach out to you, because I'll be very happy to answer your question, Martha, in an email.
Yeah.
Yes, Claire,
Absolutely.
another option, this is Beth from CORE, is to look at your session section on the CORE NTD website, and you can actually continue the discussion on there as well.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Great. Well, I'm so glad that people are talking in the chat and people are interested. It's really encouraging to see, and we're just happy to have the engagement and conversation continue after this kind of limited hour and a half that we have together. So thank you for your engagement in the chat, and we hope to continue with that. I'm going to turn over to our co-moderator, Emmanuel, now, who is going to lead us in our breakout groups. And you can display the slide as well that kicks off this portion as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you, Claire, and the participants for coming to this session. Now, in the next 40 minutes, we are going to break into small groups to discuss a case study and root cause analysis. Then we'll come back together again and then to debrief on the discussion you had in your breakout groups. And as you move into your breakout rooms, you'll find the facilitators who will give you additional instructions to follow. Now, going to divide us into groups. Thank you very much. See you after the breakout. Welcome back, everyone, from the breakout sessions. I think you had very good discussions, sort of about the confusion about the Jamboards and the links. But welcome back, everyone. From the group that I facilitated, we had a number of ideas coming out, and we had a very rich discussion. And when we discussed the case study and looked at the information can help us gather, a number of ideas came up. For example, we said a properly done root cause analysis can help us get people's trusted sources of information. Because probably that's the reason people are trusting the church leaders, maybe that those could give their trusted sources of information. And then it can also help us to identify who are the leaders, and then we can engage them to ensure that they have the correct information and they pass on that information to the community. Because if we don't engage the trusted sources of information, then the information people have might not be the correct one. Then a proper done root cause analysis exercise can also help us identify the misconceptions that are being spread in the community, as well as the rumors in the community. And then we also discussed that it can help us to understand the local leaders, the well-known people who could help dispel the rumors in the communities. If the communities have rumors, who can we engage to dispel these rumors? And that goes back to the people that are trusted in the communities. But also the other issue is that we need to make sure that the root cause analysis is more specific. We'll dig out more information. So we keep asking the reasons why, like that we get more information coming out from the communities. And then we're able to understand the real reasons for their refusal or for their lying. For example, in the case study, there are those who are lying. So we needed to know whether they are under some sort of pressure for them to lie, that they were taking NTDs, they're not taking it. So those are some of the discussions we had. Those are the ideas we had from our group. I don't know whether Janet and Claire, you have additional points coming out from your group, and you can share this.
Hi, Emma. I'm going to just read out from Ganette's group. And so our group kind of discussed this case study of adolescents missing MDA, as well as some rumors spreading among church groups. So we listed kind of key groups as adolescents, churchgoers, really emphasizing an intersectional lens, also bringing in people who are dealing with issues of ability and living in poverty. We discussed that some of these groups might be missed due to rumors being spread, and mostly about, the negative side effects of MDA. And then as possible solutions, we discussed, social media mobilization, targeting messaging, as well as like one-on-one discussions, and then working more closely with religious leaders to pull them into planning of MDA. So we also, those were some of the things that we discussed in our group as a takeaway.
Okay, yeah. Thank you very much. Any other?
And that is it from the groups, Emma. The group merged. Yeah, that's it.
Oh, we had 2 groups. Yeah, okay, thank you very much. Now I think we'll finalize, and I'm going to give our final remarks. From the discussions we've had, I think it is clear that as we move towards achieving the nation goals for NTDs, it's clear that reaching the last mile is both more important but also more difficult. And this is because as we move toward achieving the nation goals, the numbers are reducing, and people are asking the question, is it worth it to reach the last mile? Because the resources put in to reach the last mile seem to bring less results than people are worried. Is it worth it? And it is only operational research that can help us justify the costs for reaching the last mile. And this is the right thing to do, because if we fail to reach the last mile, we are losing on all fronts. First, we risk recrudescence, and 2, we fail to support some people to realize their right to health. And this is the main reason we embrace equity and inclusion. Also important is that operational research will provide us with the data. Will provide us with the data that will help us to identify the gaps that we are addressing. And then this will help us to tailor our intervention to ensure that we reach the last mile. And it is operational research that will give us both qualitative and quantitative data. We need the numbers, but also we need the stories behind the numbers to be able to adjust our approaches and reach the last mile. Also of importance is that our research methodologies should always ensure that they promote meaningful involvement of the last mile communities. And this is important because it helps us to get their perspective on the root causes of the gaps we're trying to address, but also it helps us to involve them in devising culturally and contextually relevant solutions to ensure that we do address these barriers and involve them and reach our nation goals. From these discussions and reflections, it is clear that we need to continue to integrate GESI into our research approaches and tools for us to be able to improve our NTD response. For example, I can give an example of WIHA's root cause analysis tool that helps us to identify GESI-related barriers to NTD medication access and acceptance. If we do that, then we are able to improve our NTD response and reach the last mile. I therefore urge all actors to continue to bring a GESI-sensitive lens into research discussions as they identify challenges and also co-design solutions to address barriers and reach the last mile in NTD response. Thank you very, very much. Back to you, Claire.
Great, yeah. Next slide, please. And I just want to thank everyone who supported this session and our amazing audience. I want to thank USAID's ACT and NTD's East program, led by RTI International, with, of course, support from consortium partner WIHER. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day. Please, let's continue this conversation further through the Core NTD platform.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
everyone.